Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gunatitamanam Chidanandarupam Chidabhasakam Sarvagam Dhyanagam Munidyeyamakasha Rupam Paresham Parabrahma Rupam Ganesham Bhajema. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome to all of you for the 61st session of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. Wishing you all a divine evening. We continue with the next 5 shlokas, numbering 6 to 10 of chapter 9. Lord Krishna continues with the description of Brahma Swarupam in these verses. Today's verses will be presented by Dr. Satyanarayana, Dr. Komal, Dr. Sheila, Srimati Vasanta and Srimati Apeksha. Our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde, will braid together these verses with his valuable insights. The chanting of these verses will be done by Master R. Shankar. May we be in tune with the chanting, absorbing the essence of its meaning. But to begin with, we have Dr. Satyanarayana giving us the much needed recap of the 5 verses covered in the last session. Dear seekers, come, let's immerse ourselves in the sweetness of Vedantic Shravanam. Over to you, Dr. Satyanarayana, sir.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. If we can recall, in the first 6 chapters of Gita, Krishna has focused on Jiva Swarupam. And from 7th to 12th chapter, Krishna is focusing on Ishvara Swarupam. While talking about nature of Ishvara, Krishna deals with higher nature and lower nature of the Lord and is called as Prakriti and Prakriti in 7th chapter. Chapter 9 also talks about Ishvara Jnanam. While the first 3 verses introduces the subject matter, 4th to 10th verse talks about Ishvara Jnanam. In fact, 9th chapter primarily concentrates on Vedanta Vichara or Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam as a means of liberation here and now, that is Jivan Mukti. Saguna Upasana, which Krishna has spoken about in previous chapter, should be used as a stepping stone to Nirguna Upasana. Lord Krishna introduces Ishvara Jnanam in the first 3 verses. In the first verse, the Supreme Lord says, "Because you are not envious on me, I shall now impart to you this very confidential knowledge and wisdom, upon knowing which you will be released from the miseries of material existence." Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya itself means that this knowledge is the greatest of all knowledge and is the greatest of all secrets. You will be released from samsara, which consists of all kinds of psychological problems. So all kinds of agony, pain will go away and you will have free life, which is called as Jivan Mukti. That is the benefit of this knowledge. Ishvara consists of both higher nature and lower nature. By higher nature, what we mean is that which is beyond the conditions of time and space. And lower nature means that which is within time and space. So the higher nature is attributeless, changeless, divisionless, nirguna, advaita, vijnana, nirvikara, chetana, and so on. The lower nature has attributes, changes, Veda, Saguna, Dvaita, Jnanam, Savikara, Achetana, and so on. In the second verse, he says, "This knowledge is the king of science and the most profound of all secrets. It purifies those who hear it. It is directly realizable, in accordance with dharma, easy to practice, and everlasting effect." Krishna continues with the glory of this knowledge, Jnana Mahima. This knowledge is Raja Vidya because this knowledge deals with the highest nature of Nirguna Swarupam. Secondly, this is the only liberating knowledge. This gives fulfillment at all levels, physical, social, cognitive, and emotional. He calls this Raja Guhyam because it is the greatest secret and not easily available. He calls this Pavitram, the greatest purifier in creation. Pratyaksha Avagamam, directly available here and now. Dharmyam, it is keeping with Vedic teachings. Avyayam, which is everlasting.
He says, "People who have no faith in this dharma are unable to attain me, O conqueror of enemies. They repeatedly come back to this world in the cycle of birth and death. Purusha ashraddha dhanatah. Many people do not have shraddha in efficacy of this knowledge. Krishna emphasizes such people aprapyam mam. They lose the opportunity to attain me. They miss me, which is the infinite Ananda. So, Shraddha or Anasuya is the most important qualification. Mrityu samsara vartamani. They remain in the hold of samsara, punarapi jananam and punarapi mananam, requiring things and losing things. Having introduced Ishvara Jnanam in first 3 verses, Krishna enters the main topic of Ishvara Jnanam from 4 to 10. In 4th verse,
he says, the entire cosmic manifestation is pervaded by me in an unmanifest form. All living beings dwell in me, but I do not dwell in them. He talks about the nature of God, especially the higher nature. God in his higher nature is attributeless and formless, avyakta. He is indriya agocharam. Second feature he tells is tatam or sarvagatam, that is pervaded all over, no spatial limitations. Third feature is mastani sarva bhutani, the whole world rests in me. In verse 9.5, he says, and yet the living beings do not abide in me. Behold the mystery of divine energy. Although I am the creator and sustainer of all living beings, I am not influenced by them or by material nature. In the previous sloka, all beings are in me, and in this sloka, he says all beings are not in me. Shankaracharya beautifully resolves this contradiction. He concludes it as seemingly existent. He gives an example of a dream, which is from a dreamer's angle is existent and from waker's angle is non-existent. From the lower order, it is there, and from the higher order, it is not there. It is mithya, experientially available, but factually non-existent. He gives the fourth feature here, Srishti Sthiti Laya Karanam of the entire universe. Summarizing, features of higher nature talked about are avyakta, which is formless or attributeless, tatam, which is all-pervading, mastani sarva bhutani, which is supporter of all, and bhuta bhava or bhuta brit, which is creator and sustainer. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Satyanarayana, for an excellent review, a recap of the first 5 verses of the 9th chapter of the Gita. The beauty of the Bhagavad Gita is that we can listen to it any number of times and enjoy listening to the Bhagavad Gita. Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmada Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We continue to study from the 6th to the 10th verse of the 9th chapter. And all these 5 verses that we study today are very similar to verses 4 and 5, which talk about the higher nature or the Nirguna Ishvara Swarupa, which is the important theme of the 9th chapter. And it is these verses which I have been referring to as the goalpost verses, where Krishna is referring us or directing us to our higher nature. This part is the essence of all the Upanishads. To recall once again what happened in the beginning of the 8th chapter, Arjuna asks a number of questions. 2 questions I would like to refer to. Kim tad Brahma, kim adhyatmam. What is Brahman and what is Adhyatma? In reply to this, Sri Krishna replies, Aksharam Brahma Paramam. This is a very beautiful definition of Brahman. Aksharam, that which does not undergo any decay, does not undergo degeneration, and therefore that does not undergo death. Paramam here means something that is beyond. Beyond here means transcendental. It may be there, it is immanent because it is everywhere, but it is transcendental, means it is of a higher order of reality. That means from a lower order of reality, it is not perceptible and it cannot be affected by anything. That is what Krishna says for Brahman. And for what is Adhyatma, he says, Swabhavam Adhyatmam Uchyate. Our essential, our true nature, our Swabhava is Atma. Krishna is saying consciousness is our true nature. We need to resolve these two things. What is Brahman and what is Atma? Now, from the angle of the total, consciousness is referred to as Brahman. The same consciousness from an angle of the individual is referred to as Adhyatma or Atma. That means our true nature, our Swabhava, our inner essence is consciousness. It is like the space within the room is the same as the total space. Absolutely no difference. But because of the walls, which are also within space, there is a seeming sense of limitation, but the nature is one and the same. As students of Vedanta, one important exercise that we need to do is what is the difference between Atma and Anatma? Atma here means myself. Anatma means not self. And if I'm very clear about this Atma, Anatma, Viveka, then we will know, do I claim the Anatma as myself or do I claim the Atma as myself? And this exercise of claiming makes all the difference. This is considered as the first step in Vedanta, is Sat Asat Viveka, discrimination between self and not self, or also Drik Drishya Viveka, between the one who's the experiencer and the one that is experienced. Normally, we tend to identify this body-mind complex as my real self. This body-mind is called also the Jiva. The Jiva has four essential components: the gross body, the subtle body or the mind, and the causal body. In addition, we know that there is the Atma Tattva which pervades and enlivens this body. So now, do I identify myself with these three bodies or do I identify myself with Atma? That is the whole exercise that we need to do. When we enter into these goalpost verses in the Bhagavad Gita, or when we study the Upanishads, which we are going to do immediately after starting this class, we will see one thing. The Upanishads teach us again and again to gradually move from body identification, which is material, which is perishable, which is temporary. We have lived through so many bodies. In this life itself, we have gone through a small child's body, a baby's body, a young boy or a young girl's body. And then we have seen that the embodied that I am is so different from the so many bodies that I have been through. And therefore, the bodies which are constantly changing are not so real as the embodied, the Atma within me. Also, the Atma does not have any limitations. It is described as Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam in the second chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad. Sat means it is existent. It does not undergo any change. Jnanam means it is of the nature of consciousness. And both Sat and Jnanam are of the nature of Anantam, or limitless existence and limitless consciousness. So our training is, the real me is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, and the body-mind is only an instrument through which I'm able to communicate, interact with the world temporarily, but not to identify with too much, just like any instrument that I use, like the computer or my vehicle that I use for transportation. If I'm able to claim the Atma Tattvam, and own as my real nature. And if this knowledge becomes a nishta, that means in and through all my daily transactions, I will not be swerved from my higher nature. That is what is called moksha, and that kind of living is called a jivan mukta. The Upanishads and the Gita remind us again and again of these certain terms that we should be very familiar with. Atma is of the nature of consciousness, and in Sanskrit it is also called Chaitanya or Chitrupa. Chaitanyam is non-material, and because it is non-material, it has a few lakshana. One is Atma is Swatantra. It is independent. It is not dependent on matter for its production or for its existence. It is independent of matter. It is nirguna. It has no attributes whatsoever. Any attribute that I experience belongs to the body, mind, and the object of my experience, and not to Atma. Atma is attributeless. Atma is nityaha. That means it is kala atita. It is beyond time. Whenever you enter into the domain of Atma, you have no sense of time. For example, when you are fast asleep. When you are fast asleep, you are beyond the realm of time. You are not in time. The moment we wake up, then we get into time consciousness. We enter into the domain of time. The real me is sarvagataha. My sarvam idam protam sutre manigana eva. Krishna exclaims that. We too need to claim that I am sarvagata. But is this my experience? Not at all. My experience is limited. I am here. Then how can I be sarvagataha? The moment I wake up, my mind also wakes up. The mind through the sense organs gives me a pseudo sense of limitation. But Guru and Shastras tell us, and I have that Shraddha, and through Shraddha I have this knowledge, although my experience is one of limitations, my real nature is all-pervading, because that is the nature of Atma. Atma ekaha. This one consciousness that is enlivening this body is the same that enlivens every body. Every object of creation is enlivened or given existence through that one eka Atma Tattva. Now, how do we do this exercise in daily life? Scriptures tell us that this is an important exercise of Atma, Anatma, Vivek. And one exercise that we need to do regularly from the time we wake up is Drik Drishya Viveka, based on two fundamental laws. The first fundamental law is Drik Drishya Viveka. The second fundamental law is my true nature is Nirguna. The first law says, I am other than whatever I experience. Whatever I experience is an object of my experience, which includes my body and mind. So the first step is I claim that I'm not this body and mind or any object of my experience, which I clearly understand. The real problem is the tendency to identify this body, mind as myself. The second fundamental law is about Nirguna. I, the experiencer, am free from all attributes. I have no attributes in time, so therefore I'm Nitya. I have no attributes in space, I'm Sarvagataha. I have no attributes regarding to objects. There is a sense of identification with this object, but remind yourself again and again, this object is only an instrument of my communication. I am the knower of all the attributes, and the knower is other than all these attributes. So I myself have no attributes. With this background, we will listen to these particular verses. And when we say Atma is this, we have to now shift gears. And this shifting of gears happens in the Upanishads. In verse 5, Shri Krishna had said, Pashya me yogam Ishvara. He gives us a very verse which tends to cause a contradiction. He says, all beings are in me. And the next verse he says, in fact, no beings are in me. See my glory. That was given in verse 9, in 9th chapter, 5th verse. If one day when we go to the 11th chapter, we will see Pashya me yoga maishwaram is repeated in the 11th verse, in the 8th verse of the 11th chapter, when Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, you will not be able to see my real nature, but I will give you that Divya Chakshu. Divya Chakshu here also means Brahma Vidya. When you develop Brahma Vidya, you will be able to see what? Our own true nature. And with that Divya Chakshu, what do I see? That my true nature is Avyaktam. My body mind is Vyakti. That's why we are all called Vyaktis, because we are manifest. But true nature is unmanifest. Although the Atma Tattva or Brahman in me is not manifest, I know I am. Second, I have already said this. I am Sarvagataha. Although it is not my experience, I know as Atma, I am all-pervading. The third and very difficult to say, Pashyame Yoga Maishwaram, is that I as Atma or I as consciousness, I am the supporter of the whole world. Now this becomes very difficult to believe, very difficult to understand, but the Upanishads have its own style of giving us the answers to all these questions. It happens in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where Yajnavalika is giving a discourse, and there are many students, and among the students is Maitri, who was formerly his wife, but now a student. And being a wife, she has the opportunity, or she has a chance to be able to be more aggressive in questioning. And one day she went on asking question after question. And Yajnavalika said, stop. I'm not going to answer your question. In fact, you have to answer my questions. And his first question is, where are you? And she suddenly said, I'm in your ashram, Bhagwan. And he says, where is this ashram? Now, as I'm relating the Yajnavalika Maitri questions, I want you to answer Yajnavalika's questions before Maitri answers it for all of us. So the question was, where is this ashram? And the Lord, and the answer that she gives is, this ashram is in India. Where is India? Easy to reply. It is in the world. Where is the world? It is in space. Where is the space? Think and answer. So Yajnavalika is asking Maitri, where is this world? Where is this world? It is in space. Where is the space? And she gives a brilliant answer. It is in my mind. Where is your mind? It is in consciousness. If you relate to it, you will see this whole world is actually in my mind, and my mind is in my consciousness. And when you see yourself as Atma, you are Mithya Jagat Adhishtanam. From that angle, if I see myself as Atma, just like I can create Srishti Sthiti Laya of my dream, Atma is the one that gives Srishti Sthiti Laya of this entire Mithya universe. In the same way, Atma is Asangatva, which all this we will be touching in today's class. Atma can never be contaminated. Why? Because it is of a higher order of the reality, and the higher order of the reality cannot be affected by anything that happens in a lower order of reality. Once we understand all this, this is very important to realize. The real me is Akarta, it is Abhokta. Although I am doing so many things, really I am not doing. And if I'm not doing anything, I cannot be a Bhokta.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse 9.6 goes like this. Yatha kasho stitho nityam vayu sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani Matstani iti upadharaya. Yathakasho stitho nityam. The great, all-pervading. Vayu sarvatra go mahan. Wind is ever present in space. Tatha sarvani bhutani. In the same manner, all beings, matani iti upadharaya, are in me, thus you understand. So Krishna is saying here, just as the great all-pervading wind is ever present in space, in the same manner, thus you understand. In this verse, Krishna introduces the fifth feature of the Lord or Brahman, and the feature introduced here is Sarvagatam, unsullied nature or unnature. Majstani is used 3 times in the last few verses, which means all beings rest in me. They cannot be separated from him, even though they transmigrate in different bodies and accept affinity with matter. Next slide. Krishna gives an analogy here to enable Arjuna to grasp the concept. He gives an example of Akasha or space, and that is the nearest example of Brahman. Space also is formless and all-pervading. Even though space accommodates everything, space is not burnt by fire. It is not wet by water. The wind has no existence independent of sky. It moves incessantly and furiously, and yet it rests within the sky. In spite of Vayu moving with good and bad smell, Akasha. Likewise, the souls have no existence independent of God. They move in time, place, and consciousness through transitory bodies, sometimes rapidly, sometimes slowly, and yet they always exist within God. Everything that exists in cosmos is subordinate to the will of God. It is created, maintained, and annihilated in accordance with his will. In this way also, Krishna further talks about few more features of Brahman, and let us see that in coming verses. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Satya, for an explanation of this verse, which brings about, which Sri Krishna is giving a certain drishtanta. Drishtanta is an example where Sri Krishna is comparing himself to space. And this is a very beautiful comparison for Atma. Our higher nature can be compared to space in so many ways because it is all-pervading. Space is also all-pervading. Space accommodates everything, and importantly is asangatvam. The space cannot be affected by anything in this world, and therefore what we need to remind ourselves, just like events in the dream do not affect me, so too events in the waking world should not affect me as long as I identify with my Atma Tattva, even though I experience so many things. The next verse will be explained to us by Dr. Komal Prasad. Over to you, Dr. Komal.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpado Visrujamyaham. Kaunteya, O Arjuna, Kalpakshaye, at the end of each cycle, Sarva Bhutani, all beings, Yanti Mamikam Prakritim, resolve into my Prakriti. Punah Kalpadau, again at the beginning of the next cycle, Aham Visrajamitani, I create them again. Now Krishna had pointed out that the Lord is the Srishti Sthiti Laya Karanam of the entire universe. Further explanation is given in this verse, Jagat Karanatvam of Brahman. How does the Lord create? So here Krishna says, before creation of this universe, the universe was already existent in me, in unmanifest form, in a potential form, because nothing can be newly created. According to law of conservation of matter and energy, nothing can be newly created. Even an ounce of matter cannot be created by anyone, including God. Therefore, God says, I do not create a world at all. The world was already existent in me. Only difference, the world was existent in seed form, a potential, unmanifest form. Just as a huge tree exists within a seed, or as a baby exists in the womb of the mother, in avyakta rupena. Similarly, Krishna says, all the details of this universe is already coded in me, in avyakta rupa. That unmanifest universe is called Prakriti or Maya, world in seed form, matter in potential form. And this unmanifest universe evolves into manifestation. And again, it goes back into unmanifestation. Cyclical, like love dub of the heart, like inspiration and expiration. The creation is also expansion and contraction, unfolding and folding, like a wave, like foam on the wave, comes and goes. As we wonder whether it is possible, whether to believe, Swami Paramatmananda gives an explanation, an analogy. He says, extend this analogy to our dream world. He says, now your dream of tonight. Now, what is the dream? All the dream that you have are nothing but the impressions that you have gathered from your observation and experience. Therefore, today's dream is already in the waker. In what form? In a potential form. Today's dream of yours is already in your mind in potential form. We have recorded in our mental tape like a VCR, like a recorder. VCR operation will be replaced by dream is potentially there in you as a waker. Similarly, the dreamlike world is in Brahman, in unmanifest form, which is called Maya or Prakriti. And Krishna says, in my presence as Brahman, the whole creation rises and dissolves. So he says, Hey Kaunteya, Sarva Bhutani Prakritim Yanti. All the beings come back to me alone. In what form? In unmanifest form, Maya form. The unmanifest Prakriti is also eventually dependent on me, the Brahman. I am the substratum of both the universe as well as the Prakriti. And when that resolution happens, when will it happen? It will not happen in the near future. Kalpakshe, it's Brahmaji's days, which is 2000 Chaturyugas, a duration of a vast amount of time. Then they all resolve into me and Kalpadav, and again in the beginning of the next Kalpa, Aham Visrijami, the creation comes back again. In the next slide, we see some of the crucial distinctions hidden in this simple looking verse. Whenever we say Sarvabhutani, all the things and beings, we have to remember Nama and Rupa only. There's no creation other than names and forms. Therefore, all the names and forms resolve into Prakriti. And what type of Prakriti? Mamikam, very important word here in this verse. It's belonging to me, the Brahman. And this expression is very important because it reveals the primary difference between Sankhya philosophy and Vedanta philosophy. In Sankhya also, Purusha and Prakriti are talked about. Prakriti. And what's the crucial difference? In Sankhya, Prakriti has independent existence, whereas Vedanta does not accept Prakriti as an independent entity. To give an analogy, imagine a primordial hot milk, where hotness and milk cannot be separated. That's like Brahman. It's both Upadana Karanam, that's the material cause of the world, and also the Nimitta Karana, that's the efficient cause of the world. In explanation of Shankara Bhashya of this verse, Swami Paramarthananda says, the material cause is more specifically Vivarta Upadana Karanam, a material which does not undergo any change. A layer of cream appears out of this hot milk, Maya or Prakriti. This material cause of universe, this Upadana Karanam, a part of it which undergoes change, particularly Parinami Upadana Karana, is Maya or Prakriti. And it holds in avyakta form. It contains the foam of milk in a seed form. This foam, this formation of foam is like creation, which appears out of Brahman through Maya. It's created and dissolved into Maya, Prakriti, and eventually into Brahman. What is evident is what actually exists. And what actually exists is only milk, the hot milk and nothing else. cream, foam, universe, everything else are only names and forms. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Komal, for a nice explanation of this verse where Shri Krishna is telling us how he is the cause of the world, how he himself becomes the world, how he is the creator, the sustainer, and to whom the whole world resolves. The best way to understand this is how we ourselves create our dream world, how we sustain our dream world, and how the dream world resolves into it. Also, nothing comes from nothing. That means, as nicely explained, the dream that we are going to have tonight is already there in an unmanifest form. And when the conditions is right, it becomes manifest. And after some time, it resolves into ourselves. It is very amazing, but that is what Shri Krishna is saying about this whole creation. It is like a dream-like stuff. The next verse and a similar verse will be explained to us by Dr. Sheila.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In continuation with important verses of Atma Jnanam in this chapter, the verse goes like this. Prakritim samavashtabhya visrujami punah punaha bhutagramamivam krishnam avasham prakritir vashad. You can see the meaning in the next slide. Swama Vashtabhya, keeping under my control, Prakritim, Prakriti, Visrajami Puna Punaha. I create jivas again and again. Imam Krishnam Bhuta Gramam, this entire multitude of beings, Avasham, helpless, Vasat Prakriti, being under the control of Prakriti. The meaning of the whole verse goes like this. Keeping under my own control of Prakriti, I create this entire multitude of beings, that is jivas, again and again, who are all helpless, powerless, owing to the sway of their nature. This verse is like reading in between the lines. In the next slide, Shankaracharya gives another important definition of Prakriti in this shloka, that is, Avidya Lakshanam Prakritim. The Prakriti which we talk is nothing but Avidya or Maya. Avidya is defined as that which is eliminated by knowledge, that which is falsified or negated by knowledge. It is Mithya Padartha. One should remember it is not absence of knowledge. One more definition is Vastutaha na vidyate iti avidya, that which does not really exist, but it has got seeming existence, which is enough to cause samsara. If it is totally not existent, it cannot cause problems, because a non-existent thing cannot cause anything. Next, avasam prakriti vasat. Jivas are helpless under the control of Maya, Prakriti. In the next slide, in Shankara Bhashyam, the Jivas are under the control of Avidya Adi, which means Avidya and etc., which means Avidya Kama Karma. So Jivas are under the control of three factors, that is Avidya Kama Karma, but not the Supreme Bhagavan. Avidya has two-fold Shaktis, that is Avarna and Vikshepa Shakti. It is this Avarna Shakti which casts spell on Jivas. The Jiva doesn't know he is Aham Brahmasmi. He is subject to Punya Papa Karmas and Vasanas, which leads to birth and death again and again. So Shankaracharya in his Bhashyam, he says this shloka can create a doubt, which you see in the next slide. What is that? Bhagwan says he does the creation, then he becomes a doer, that is karta of threefold actions of Srishti, Sthiti and Laya. Then he is responsible for karma and its pala, that is karma pala, papa punya, then he is a very big samsari, which is not so. We know he is akarta and abhokta, that is, he is beyond karma palam. This is very well explained in the next subsequent verse, that all this Shrishti, Sthiti, Laya, karmas belong to Prakriti, but takes place in the presence of him only. Who is he? It is Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness. With this, we understand Bhagavan is the master. He is, his Karana status is because of he being Adhishtanam of Karana Prakriti, and karma does not bind him. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila, for another excellent explanation of a very related verse where Sri Krishna is explaining how I create this world and how it happens again and again. So this is a cyclical way in which the whole creation happens. And the Lord is now both the intelligent cause and the material cause. If the Lord is both the intelligent and the material cause, how do I look upon creation? I look upon creation none other than the creator itself. And that is why in our tradition, we give so much reverence to everything in nature. The ground beneath me is treated as Bhudevi. Every object that I see is a manifestation of God. And if I'm able to see everything as God itself, I develop a great reverence for creation. The next verse will be explained to us by Vasanta. Over to you, Vasanta.
Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Let's go into the sloka. Nacha mam tani karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya udasina vat asinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Dhananjaya, O Arjuna, tani karmani na nibadhanti mam. Those actions do not bind me. Asaktam teshu karmasu, who am uninvolved in or unattached to those actions. Asinam udasinavat, and who remain like an indifferent person. So this sloka says, O Arjuna, however, those actions do not bind me, who am uninvolved in those actions and who remain like an indifferent person. So Arjuna normally sees Krishna as his charioteer and his friend. But in verses 4 to 10 in this chapter, Lord Krishna begins to describe his true or higher self to Arjuna. We have already seen the following characteristics of the Lord. He is avyakta or unmanifest, so he is not experienceable through any sensory organs. Next, the Lord is sarvagata or all-pervading, since he has no boundaries or limits. The closest analogy we have is space, which is all-pervading. Third, the Lord is the substratum of the entire visible universe, or the Jagad Adhishthanam. The Lord is consciousness and the universe is matter. So this implies that consciousness is the substratum of matter. There can be no matter without consciousness. Consciousness is Satyam and matter or the universe is Mithya. Fourth, the Lord is Asangaha or unattached and unsullied. Though he is the substratum of the universe, he is untainted by the impurities of creation. He's like a Shuddha Sphatika Sankasham, a pure, clear crystal form with absolutely no impurities. Fifth, the Lord is the Jagat Srishti Sthiti Layakara, the source of the universe's unending cycle of manifestation, sustenance, and unmanifestation, where multitudes of beings are manifested and unmanifested. In this very relevant and inspiring sloka, Krishna describes the sixth characteristic of the Lord. Considering the Lord is the manifester of the universe, that would make him a karta or doer, and consequently a bhokta or enjoyer of results. the Lord states emphatically in this sloka that his manifestation of the universe and hosts of beings is done without a sense of kartrutva or doership. The Lord continuously does all the karmas of Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, and yet remains an akarta and abhokta. He says, all the actions I perform do not bind me. What is his secret? The Lord's secret lies in his being indifferent. He is equanimous, unaffected by, and uninvolved in all his actions. He is also detached from the fruits of all his actions. This indifference, detachment, and abandoning the conceit of doership are what ensure that his actions do not bind him. Swami Chinmayananda uses the analogy of a movie being played on a screen. The Lord is the screen that enables the screening of the movie. Like the screen, he has nothing to do with the emotions being displayed on the screen. Just as the movie on the screen is not real, the Maya Prapancha being created and destroyed through the Lord's actions is also unreal. Everything is part of the higher self. Shankaracharya emphasizes that like the Lord, we human beings too need to become detached and stop clinging to the fruits of our actions and drop the conceit of doership to ensure that we are not caught in this cosmic cycle. Otherwise, we will be like the silkworm that gets bound by its own work while creating a cocoon. Hari Om.
Thank you, Vasanta. That was a very nice explanation of a difficult verse. The difficulty is to understand how is that you can do things and not be a karta. This is the highest aspect of karma yoga, which has been brought out in so many verses from the 2nd chapter up to the 4th and 5th chapter. You will remember in the 2nd chapter, Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubeshu krite tushkrute tasmad yogaya yujyasya yogaha karmasu kausala. The more we identify with the Atma Tattva within us, we continue to do whatever we do, but now we have the understanding that I am a facilitator, it is happening through me, and therefore, although I am working, I am an akarta. And when you are an akarta, you become a bhokta. The next verse will explain to us about what is this udasina? How does all these things happen? And that will be explained to us by Apeksha. Over to you, Apeksha.
Hari Om, sir. Maya dhyakshen prakritihi suyatehe sacharacharam hetu nanen kontaye jagat vi parivartate. Because of me, the presiding principle, Prakriti creates the universe of things and beings. And because of this reason, the entire universe revolves, O Arjuna. So Sri Krishna talks about here in my presence. In the presence of the Sakshi, Maya or matter does its function. So what does it mean to be a Sakshi? It says remaining detached, remaining without Abhimana is called the Sakshi Bhava. To understand it more, Swamiji gives a beautiful example. For example, the hall that we are sitting in right now is illuminated by the light. Now, in the same hall or the room that I'm sitting in, good actions can take place, bad actions can take place. The light does not have any role in it. It does not have any effect on the light, or the light gets untainted. The actions will still take place as per the nature of the people present here. Next slide, sir. So, in my presence, let's take it word by word. In my presence, here we have to be careful. Krishna is not talking about the lower nature. That is the Krishna Shariram, which is visible. He talks about in my presence, the all-pervading consciousness he's talking about, which is untainted, unaffected. In that presence, entire universe of things and beings happen. To understand it more, Another example is the role of electricity. So, which will make the role of Ishvara also clear. What does it mean in my presence? Role of electricity, like if you see in this room, the instruments that are there will perform as per their nature. For example, if the mic is there, it will do its role of amplification. If bulb is there in the presence of electricity, it will illuminate. If fan is there, it will do its function of rotation. Similarly, in the presence of Ishvara, that's how we have to understand the role of Ishvara also. The sattvic mind will perform sattvic actions. The Rajasic mind will perform Rajasic actions, and the Tamasic criminal mind will perform Tamasic criminal actions. All is blessed by consciousness, Ishvara. But everyone perform according to the nature of their mind, and Ishvara has no role in it. Next slide, sir. God or Ishvara does not determine the nature of the thought. It just enlivens the instrument depending upon the nature of the instrument or the nature of our mind. The thoughts are generated accordingly. So we have to understand it means because of the sheer presence of Krishna or the Ishvara or the all-pervading consciousness, the whole drama is going on. If Krishna is not there, the all-pervading consciousness is not there, or for that matter, electricity or light is not there, everything, the drama, the actions, everything will stop. So that's why Krishna says this entire universe revolves. Everything that you see is in motion, the planets, the entire solar system, the entire Milky Way. In fact, everything is in motion because of his presence. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you, Apeksha, for explaining this verse. Another difficult verse to understand, where Shri Krishna describes himself as the indifferent observer. And that is what we need to see in our own self, to be the one who is the observer, the Sakshi, the illuminator. And although I illuminate everything, how I will not be affected. And in such a way, how I can facilitate everything. Shri Krishna says it is under my direction, under my supervision, that everything in this world happens. This whole world revolves under me. If we have that sense of Shraddha, then what happens is it helps us to be able to accept whatever happens is willed by the Lord. Not that God is doing it, but it is part of our karma, part of the samashti karma. And through these understanding of our true nature, what happens is we develop a mental frame of mind that helps us to come to terms, although the situation outside may not change, but the way we are able to handle these certainly changes. In the next set of verses, Shri Krishna will describe why is there so much suffering in this world. Now, with this understanding, if we proceed, we will be illuminators of all kinds of difficulties in the world. And Shri Krishna in the next verse will say, Avajananti Mam, the one who does not know my higher nature, and therefore he is a fool, Mudaha, and therefore we have all this problem of samsara. With that, we will conclude this class by listening to Arush Shankar, who will recite these verses from verses 6 to 10. Over to you, Arush.
Harihi Om. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yatha Kashasthito Nityam Vayus Sarvatra Go Mahan Tatha Sarvani Bhutani Matsthani Tyupadharaya Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpadau Visrajamyaham Prakritim Swamavashtabhya Visrajami Punah
पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात् न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् आसक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम थैंक यू सर
Thank you, dear Arush, for the flawless and wonderful chanting from Sringeri, the Lord of Goddess Sharda. What a perfect culmination of innocence and Bhakti Bhava that touched our hearts. Truly blessed. Thank you, Dr. Timappa Hegde, sir, for your consistent guidance, holding up the mirror for us to see our true nature under the light of Swamiji's teachings. Sincere gratitude to all the speakers for sharing their understanding in such a pristine way. In today's session, we got a description of Brahma Swarupam, which is the essence of Upanishads, condensed by Lord Krishna, making it easier for us to understand and assimilate. If we can dwell upon one of these aspects to make it a part of a spiritual journey, we can break free from the cycle of samsara, which is karma cannot be renounced, karma need not be renounced. What is to be renounced is the abhimana of doership. Let us put this into practice, this bhava of akartatvam and abhoktatvam, slowly but surely. We continue our study of the 9th chapter in the next session on Friday, the 10th of December, 2021 at 6:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Dear seekers, Gita Jayanti is around the corner. As you're aware, there's an opportunity to offer Guri Dakshina twice a year, once during Guri Purnima and second occasion is during Gita Jayanti. As we have made it clear many times, this entire amount collected will go to our Gurus. Those of you who are desirous of offering Guru Dakshina may please do so to our account, the details of which are provided on the screen and in the Telegram group of Param Vedanta as well. Please note that there is no compulsion to make any offering, nor any amount is specified. It's purely one's choice. Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Hari Om.